So again, I want to welcome each of you to the Friends of Astrology lecture for Friday, March 11th, 2022. And this evening, we present the astrology of Chicago baseball with Cesar Love. Cesar Love, the author of Baseball, an Astrological Sightline, presents the astrology of the White Sox and the Cubs. He introduces the birth charts of both teams and plunges into the astrology beneath the mysteries of their histories, including the fixing of the 1919 World Series and the curse of the GOAT. Cesar Love is a poet and astrologer based in Northern California. He's the author of the book that was just referenced, and he also takes a look at charts of every Major League Baseball team, along with the history of each of these teams from an astrological perspective. Furthermore, his book introduces methods to witness the impacts of astrological transits within every Major League Baseball game. So with that, everyone, let us welcome Cesar Love. And if you have questions throughout his presentation, feel free to type your question into the chat pod, or if the speaker does call for questions at any point during his presentation, feel free to turn on your microphone and verbally ask your question at that time. So Cesar, you have the mic. You should be able to share your screen with us now if you have a PowerPoint slide.
I do. Let me find it here. And I am, okay, so first thing I want to say is I feel very honored to be here before your fair city speaking about your teams. I have a disclaimer to make, and that is that I am neither a Cubs fan nor a White Sox fan. So I feel sort of like the anthropologist who is coming into your tribe and trying to explain to you what it is you're about. And I realize that can be very problematic when an outsider's trying to explain what it is about you or your team. And the way I look at these things is that each Major League Baseball team, just like most sports teams, are a spiritual community with various concentric circles. And you've got the team at the center, and you've got the history at the center, and you've got various levels of fans, some who are very highly devoted, some who are fair weather fans, but together they form a spiritual community. In another way, they form a tribe. So here I am kind of trying to explain what it is about your tribe. I'm assuming we have both Cubs fans and Sox fans here, Northsiders and Southsiders, or however they intertwine. I dressed up for the occasion. I had a shirt that was going to look black. And I said, okay, I don't have anything that's really Cubs colors, but I found this shirt, and I was looking for a black tie. I found a white tie, which is, it's like White Sox, but it's not. I was looking for a black tie. I couldn't quite find one. So trying to dress in a way to honor both your teams, although this is more like Florida Marlins teal than Cubs blue. However, that said, let me get started. So about the astrology of the Cubs and the White Sox. This presentation has three parts. First, I'm going to explain the astrological correspondences between the signs of the zodiac. Let me go to the next. The signs of the zodiac, the planets, going around the solar system, and the positions of a baseball team. Each position of a baseball team has a corresponding sign and planet to go with it. So let me start with Aries. The sign of Aries and the planet Mars correspond with the shortstop. You think of the shortstop's quintessential play is when they're charging forward on the slow roller, having to run forward unrestrained to be able to feel that ball and throw it out. That's Aries and Mars energy charging forward. Here's a picture of Luis Aparicio, Cubs shortstop. I believe you can look. Also want to say that players at certain positions who excel at certain positions have in their birth charts aspects that reflect why they're doing, how they landed in this position. So Aparicio, shortstop, he's got the Sun conjunct Mars in his chart. So he's got a lot of Mars energy. Also Mercury and Uranus in the sign of Aries. So here's just a drawing of, I think this is Troy Chulitsky fielding a slow roller. And next up is center field. Center field is ruled by the sign of Taurus and the planet Venus. When you think of center field, it's the indulgence of nature. You're there with an endless expanse of green to your left and to your right, and it's the growing grass of center field. If you think of the song, "Put me in, coach, I'm ready to play center field," baseball fans have this position on a pedestal. It's center field has this sort of mystical aura above all the other positions. And the reason that is because center field and the sign of Taurus are closest in the overall sensibility of the game. All the planets and signs are reflected in this game. However, Taurus, baseball is a Taurus type game. It has that sort of slow feel, that slow movement to it and that indulgence in nature. And it also goes back to the origins of baseball as a pagan fertility ritual. There's the fertility quality of baseball. We play in spring. It's a rite of spring when the grass is growing and people are just having these thoughts of fertility. So that's because Taurus overall rules the game more than others. However, I'm not going to say that it rules the game. Here is,
Cesar,
yes.
I just wanted to chime in. I'm so appreciating what you just said about Taurus and Venus being the center, because at certain times, and I've attended a few baseball games at the Chicago White Sox field, and at times during a baseball game, it could really speed up, where the energy speeds up and starts charging, and that's what a bull will do at times.
I like that. Yeah, a bull is generally kind of slow and just likes to take its time, but
Yeah, but then when they get stirred up, they really move and they charge ahead.
all right. Hey, I had not thought of that. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So here is this is the White Sox current first center fielder, Lewis Robert. I'm probably mispronouncing his name but believe he won the Golden Glove Award last year, Sox center fielder. Now let me move on to Gemini and Mercury, who ruled a pitcher. So pitcher is a very Gemini type animal. It's like a Gemini will try to outsmart an opponent rather than just bowl them over. And a Gemini, the sign of Gemini also rules the arms and the hands. Pitcher, the arms and the hands throwing things. It's very important to the pitcher. And here's a picture of Kerry Wood. He's got the sun, moon, Mercury, and Jupiter in Gemini. He's got 4 personal planets, if you want to include Jupiter, all these in Gemini. So this is very much a Gemini. So the pitcher is going to try to just outwit the batter in it's a mental sign, having to like outsmart the batter. This is Gemini on the mound. So next we have Cancer and the moon. They rule the catcher. Think of the catcher, look at his protective equipment, his chest protector, his shin pads, his mask. They're very reminiscent of a crab. They're like these shell-like accoutrements that he plays. The catcher also guards home plate, which is the center. Hold on, I got my head one slide, which is ahead of he guards home plate. You don't see home plate in this picture, but home plate, of course, is like a Cancer thing. Home, the moon, it's very lunar. Also want to include the IC. The lowest point in the chart is also important to the catcher. On top of that, Cancer, Saturn, and the moon also rule stadiums, home cities, and the fans. You think of the fans there in a mass experiencing emotions going back and forth. The happiness, the anger, the sorrow that fans experience, the emotional flows of a game, the emotional flows of a season that fans experience. These are Cancer and lunar type things happening. So, and here's a picture of a crab. You can just take a good look at him and go back and look at the chest protector, shin guards, mask. The resemblance is really kind of, it's I don't know, it's too much for me to deal with sometimes. I used to be a catcher in Little League, and I have Mars and Cancer. So Leo and the sun rule right field. Think of right fielders and they have that sunny personality. They just love the spotlight. You're usually on a baseball field, right field is the sunniest field. And these are sunny personalities that just love the attention. I think back on Sammy Sosa when he was competing for the home run title with Mark McGuire. He had so much more fun than Mark McGuire. Poor Mark McGuire, I believe he was a Pisces, and he ended up winning the battle, but he was just not enjoying himself. Where Sammy was just loving it, and that's just because he's got the moon in Leo. So he soaked it all in. He soaked in all the attention, and he's just got all that. Just a Leo knows how to feel love. And Sammy's got that. The right fielders have that. You have these showboat personalities in right field. Think of Reggie Jackson at Mars in Leo. They just love the attention. And yeah, sometimes they're too much, but we all need some Leo. Okay, think Virgo and Mercury also rule the pitcher. So the pitcher has two signs, Gemini and Virgo. The Virgo pitchers are more the nibblers, the control pitchers. I have a picture of Greg Maddox here, who played for the Cubs early in his career. He's got Uranus and Pluto in Virgo. I believe he has also, both these planets are opposite his Venus. I think his sun is in Aries, but I was looking at his chart earlier today. They're opposite, I believe, his Venus. His Mercury, I believe is in Aries or in Taurus. But anyways, he's very much a Virgo. I wish I had his rectified birth chart if I knew but I would guess he's got Virgo rising. But anyways, that style of pitcher that just nibbles at the corners, that's the control pitcher, that's very refined control, rather than trying to bowl over the opponent with a fastball. That's the Virgo pitcher. Now, think of Venus and Libra rule second base, the second baseman. You think of the second base as like the middle point of the diamond. It's slicing it from one side to the other. It's that balance point of the diamond. And you think of the quintessential play of the second baseman is having to perform the double play when the runner's charging down, barreling, trying to knock him down, keep him from completing the play. The second baseman, is able to leap into the air and still complete the throw, get the throw to first base. And they're able to do this because of that sense of equilibrium, that sense of balance that a Libra has. It's a Libran skill to stay balanced even when your feet are not on the ground. I mean, this is a picture of Ryan Sandberg completing the double play. You can see the runner's trying to knock him out, doesn't do it. He just leaps into the air. He's able to complete the throw. And Ryan Sandberg's chart, he's got Mars and North Node in Libra. Okay, so Scorpio and Pluto rule the third baseman. Think of third base, you've got the ball coming at you at an extremely fast speed, faster than coming to short, faster than coming to second base, because it's kind of like the batter's pulled it. So you've got to the third baseman doesn't have a whole lot of ground to cover, but he's got to react really quickly and fire it back really fast to the first baseman. So I think of the third baseman as he's got that scorpionic ability to be able to absorb a blow and throw it back. It's like the person who gets revenge really fast. Somebody insults them, they're able to just absorb it for a little while and then throw it right back. They take a punch, but then they throw it right back twice as hard. That's the third baseman absorbing the throw, absorbing the batted ball right at him with a huge force, able to just hold it and then throw it right back. It's just that intense scorpionic ability to just hold the pressure and throw it right back. So Scorpio and Pluto rule the third baseman. Now, Sagittarius and Jupiter rule the batter. You think of Sagittarius as an archer who's got a bow, and he's aiming for a star. He or she is aiming for a star, looking for an auspicious place to aim that arrow to be able to get something started. Well, the batter's very much the same creature. Instead of an arrow, instead of a bow and arrow, he or she has a bat and is looking to hit the ball in an auspicious part. And then after they hit the ball, they start running, they start journeying. Sagittarius is the sign of the traveler, the sign of the wayfarer, the sign of the person on a journey. So it starts a journey around the bases. first, second, third, hopefully home. So Sagittarius and Jupiter rule the batter. Now I think of Capricorn and Saturn, they rule the manager. That's the guy in the dugout making the decisions, who can be a wise, sagely father figure having their crusty advice, or they can be an old fart that just gets in the way of people's fun and development. So think of the older guy in the dugout with just, that crusty looking baseball sage, or he can just be a real, just kind of no fun old fart. Saturn and Capricorn have both these qualities. Managers have these qualities. This is Tony LaRussa. He used to be our manager here in Oakland. I think he started his managerial career on the South Side, and we have a plaque for him at the Oakland Coliseum because our Hall of Famers, get honored that way. But so, haven't seen him in a while. God, he has aged a lot since he played here. But anyways, he's looking more Saturnian. Okay, Aquarius and Uranus rule the left fielder. So the left fielders, interesting things about the left fielder. You think of like the left fielder pulling in the ball is like an air traffic controller having to like guide the planes in. The balls hit the left field and the left fielder has to negotiate the air currents, has to know which way the wind's blowing and things like that so that they can catch the ball. The left fielders are also, they can be eccentrics. You think of the expression, you're out in left field, that's a very Aquarian expression. If you're gonna having Aquarian friends, if you're an Aquarian yourself, you've probably been told, hey, you're out in left field. Well, it's quite fitting because, Aquarius rules left field. Aquarius also rules, sorry, I've got a little bit of an echo. So Aquarius and Uranus also rule the home run. Babe Ruth has a sun in Aquarius, it's 714 home runs, and Hank Aaron, also sun in Aquarius, hits 755 home runs. Barry Bonds has the moon in Aquarius, and I believe he also has Sun conjunct Mars, conjunct Uranus. I don't have Barry Bonds' chart or picture here, but if you want to look on YouTube, I've got a presentation of the Giants that has a section on Barry Bonds. So anyways, Uranus and Aquarius rule both left field and the home run. And think of like the home run as all encompassing air travel. It's fixed, it's big, it's global. That's very Uranian, very Aquarius. When you can hit it, and you can just take care of it in such a big global way. Or think of condors, the flight of a condor, a big bird that just, or an eagle that's just above everything else. That's a home run. That's Aquarius, that's Uranus. Now, Pisces and Neptune rule the first baseman. Think of what the first baseman has to do. They've got to absorb the play. They're very Piscean, very Neptunian to be able to handle those throws that are over your head to the side in the dirt, be able to just grab that throw wherever it goes. It's like the fisherman with a large net. It's a Piscean image. A first baseman is very much like a fisherman who has to just catch that ball wherever it goes, just to be able to absorb things. It also, the fact that Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, the play, a baseball play usually ends at first base when the runner's out or the ball's thrown there, and then it's and then he throws the ball back to the pitcher or to the umpire, and then the next play begins. So it's the last sign. It ends that way. It ends at first base. And the other thing about first base is take a look at a first baseman's glove. It has an uncanny resemblance to the gill of a fish. This is a symbol of Pisces. And it's interesting that the archetype of the fish, the archetype of Pisces, is manifest in the first baseman's glove. How did a first baseman's glove take on a fish gill? I don't know, but it has. It's kind of intense. So anyways, those are the signs and their and planets and their correspondence with the positions. And let me go on. Here are the symbols for the various baseball teams that are currently playing in the major leagues. I am going to now move to the south side of Chicago. So the story of the White Sox, but I have to start off with a little bit of detour. The White Sox were actually not born in south side of Chicago or even Chicago. They were actually born in Sioux City, Iowa in 1894. This is a picture that I was able to find on the internet of the original White Sox, 1894 Sioux City Cornhuskers. And I mean, you look at these guys, they are just such a group of badasses. I could just see them becoming a motorcycle gang or something like that. The way they're just sort of kind of like, look at this guy. He just couldn't care less that he's having his picture taken. This guy's glaring at it. The way these guys are just sort of standing, they've got just such attitude. I'm thinking, wow, okay, the White Sox are a team with attitude. This was their first incarnation in Sioux City, Iowa in 1894. And these guys just held that right there. So anyways, this is the predecessor to the White Sox, and they only stayed 1 year in Sioux City. However, they did win the Western League Championship that year. This team was not yet a major league team. They were born as a minor league team in the Western League, which would eventually metamorphose into the American League. But anyways, after the first year, they moved to St. Paul, Minnesota, where they were actually called themselves the St. Paul Saints. Then they called themselves the St. Paul Apostles. And one of the interesting things that happened was they were kicked out of St. Paul for violating the blue laws. They were playing games on Sundays, I think also selling alcohol at the games. But it didn't, the owner was pretty crafty. All he did was he just found a place just slightly outside of the city limits to build a stadium and a grandstand. They started playing there. Anyway, so they moved to Chicago in 1900, and then in 1901, they became part of a major league team. So anyways, here is the birth chart of the Chicago White Sox. But before I go into it in any detail, I want to talk about the early history of the White Sox. They excelled in the dead ball era. This was a time when games were not very high scoring, when the average score was something like 2-1, maybe 3-2 was a high scoring game. It was a speed and defense. Defense ruled, the pitching was very strong, and the stadiums were large, but basically it was because the ball was not very bouncy. It was like a ball that you had to hit it really hard to get it to go very, very far. And now, not like nowadays, the ball ended up getting wound tighter in the 1920s, and there were more home runs. But anyways, with a ball that's not wound very hard, you have to play really good defense, and you have to have really fast runners. And the White Sox had this, and they also had, so they won the first AL championship in 1901. Then they won the 1906 World Series. They won the 2017 World Series, and they only won the pennant in 1919. I'll talk about that more later. But they were known as the hitless wonders. This was a team that could win games without hardly hitting. I think one of these years, 1906, they won the World Series, and they had the worst batting average of the whole league. They were still able to do it because they had speed and defense. And part of the reason they were able to excel during this era was because they've got the moon in the third house. The third house also rules pitchers. So if you've got a moon in the third house, you've got a stadium that is conducive to pitchers. So Old Comiskey Park was really, really large, and it was a pitcher's park. And so hitters are not going to score a lot of runs there. So that helped. Okay, so let me talk about their birth chart. You've got Venus conjunct the ascendant, Venus and Capricorn conjunct Capricorn ascendant, and you also have Saturn in Libra. That's pretty elevated. So these two planets are in mutual reception. Saturn in Libra and Venus in Capricorn are reinforcing their energies. Contrary to this, you've got an elevated Mars conjunct Uranus in Scorpio, conjunct the MC, which is doubled in its efforts by a moon in Aries. The moon in Aries is strengthened. by this elevated Mars energy. So you've got these two poles that are very strong. You've got this kind of conservative Venus energy with the Saturn in Libra, and you've got this Aries moon going on. So there's this intense polarity, this opposition between the moon in Aries and Saturn in Libra, and it's bolstered. This opposition is also bolstered by the nodal axis right here. You've got the moon conjunct the south node, and the moon conjunct the north node. So you've got this intense polarity going on. I'm going to talk. This is going to really show itself when I talk about the 1919 World Series in a little while. But first, I want to talk about that. This is almost like if I were a Marxist, I would say this is a revolution waiting to happen, where you've got the lunar masses that are in the sign of Aries, that are passionate and angry, being kind of constrained by Saturn in Libra, which has got this sort of, you think of Saturn in Libra elevated, it almost seems like patrician. There's this mannered kind of like politeness and gentility among the ruling class, how we're so refined. And then on the opposite side, you've got this moon in Aries that's pretty coarse. It's got rough edges, it's angry, it's uncouth. And this is part of the interesting thing about the White Sox. This is a team of, I can consider, okay, from the early on, they were a favorite team of wage earners, the working class, Southside Chicago, immigrants. This is a team that they took to the unrefined masses. That this is the moon in Aries. Here it is here, all that identification with the working class is right here with the moon in Aries. And you've got, especially with its opposition to this genteel Saturn in Libra. So that's one interesting opposition that's going on. Another opposition that's happening, well, I kind of flew forward, okay, is this opposition between the sun in Scorpio and Taurus, Jupiter in Taurus. So I've never been to Comiskey Park, but from what I understand in the old days is that it was very near to the stockyards in South Chicago. So stockyards, you figure stockyards were like the cattle are going to get slaughtered. And you could smell the stockyards from Comiskey Park is what I've read in the history books. So this is interesting, the way it's manifest, how that is manifest here. You think of like Scorpio sun as the butcher and Jupiter in Taurus as the cattle being led to slaughter. So you've got this intense energy going on here of like the stockyards that is reflected here in this chart of like you want to, I don't know, I want to say the word matador. You're this killer of bulls, but it's maybe not being done ritualistically. But you've got this, Scorpio, the dark Scorpio energy. Scorpio is the executioner, Scorpio is the butcher, and Jupiter in Taurus is the fact that it's Jupiter, this expanse of Taurus energy, this expanse of cattle, this expanse. That you've got that going on. This is uncanny how this is reflected here in the White Sox chart.
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted to share. Yes, I want to confirm all of that for you. I lived across the street from Comiskey Park. And of course, what you're referring to is before my time, but the stockyards were on 39th Street and Comiskey Park was like on 35th Street. Or 4 blocks away. So I'm sure they were able to smell it. And some of you may know that Chicago at one time was known as the stockyard capital of the world. And this is where the animals were brought for processing. This is amazing, Cesar. I never would have thought to look at it that way, but here it is in the birth chart.
Okay, well, thank you. All right, so let me go on. There's more aspects I'm going to talk about later as we go on. So let's talk about the 1919 Chicago White Sox. As you know, this is in the history books. This is the team where the World Series was played against Cincinnati, and the White Sox were heavy favorites, and enough of the players um, took money from gamblers to play not to their best potential, and the White Sox ended up losing the World Series. And some of the players were banned for life. It's an intense story. But the thing to realize, well, let's go back to the White Sox birth chart and this opposition here between the sun and the moon. Like I was talking about before, you've got the intense angry masses, maybe not necessarily angry, maybe not intense, but unrefined working class people. And then you've got people with money on this side, Saturn in Libra. And this wasn't manifest just in the owners of the team. This was in 1919 World Series. You've got this manifest. You've got a class conflict, a class struggle going on actually within the team itself. So you've got the people who participated in the fix, who are representative of the moon, the moon in Aries. And we'll talk about each of them. Chick Gandal, he was known as he was the first baseman. He's the one who I don't know if he thought of the idea, but he was the one who made the contact with the gamblers. He played first base, and he was a tough guy. I think he also played as a boxer. He also had been a boxer at some time. And Buck Weaver played third baseman. So of course, somebody with that intense Scorpio energy has got to get involved. Joe Jackson he's kind of thought of as sort of a country bumpkin, and maybe he was. I'm not quite sure what he accurately was. He wasn't portrayed that way in Field of Dreams, but if you call him Shoeless Joe Jackson, you kind of get this sense of him as some kind of a hillbilly, not very sophisticated. And then you've got Happy Fletch. He played center field. He was kind of a rowdy guy. He was just kind of like a fun-loving, raucous guy. And then Swede Risberg, who was also a tough guy, like Chick Gandal, the guy that got in barroom fights. And then Eddie Cicotte, don't know a whole lot about him, but he was involved. Claude Williams also involved. These are the pitchers that are involved. Fred McMillan, he didn't play a whole lot. He was like a utility infielder, but he was also the advanced scout. And I was doing some research. Supposedly, he gave lousy scouting information on what the Reds were about, and that so that the other batters couldn't hit him very well. But anyways, these are the people who participated in the fix, and they make up the Moon and Aries faction of the White Sox. And then you've got the other side, those who were not involved. And these were the rich boys who were involved in the team. And the person that the poster child for all this was Eddie Collins, who played second base on the 1919 White Stockings. And he was making $6,000 a year. He was making more than twice as much as the next highest paid player at the White Sox. And he played second base. So Saturn and Libra, the second baseman, sign. He was also the captain. So he's kind of like the epitome of Saturn in Libra. He also had an Ivy League education. He graduated from Columbia. So these country boys and these rough Moon and Aries type guys, they couldn't stand him. They hated him. Supposedly they refused to even throw the ball to him during practice. And then you've got Red Faber. I don't know. He's just got that look of money. I didn't find out a lot about him, but he just got that sort of look on this baseball card of arrogance, of money. And then Dickie Kerr was a rich boy. His dad owned hotels. I think he went to prep school. I don't know that he went to college, but he did go to prep school. And then this guy's really fascinating, Roy Shaw. He was the catcher, and even though the moon represents the catcher, he was on the side of Saturn and Libra because he was very much an authority figure. He yelled at all the other players if he didn't like the pitcher that was being thrown at him. He would just throw it right back. And he was friends with Collins, friends with these guys, and these are the ones who did not participate in the fix. Roy Schock figured out that something was going on. I think after Game 2 of the World Series, he suspected Lefty Williams of having like thrown the game. So he like met him under the grandstands or somewhere else, and he like actually beat the guy up. So I don't know if the story's true, but I did read it in 8 Men Out. It seems kind of like uncanny that the catcher would beat up the pitcher, but hey, this is 1919. So let's look at the astrology behind this. What was actually going on? I've got a chart for when Chick Gandal met Sport Sullivan. He's the guy was who was the go-between between the people with the money, Arnold Rothstein, and the other gamblers who supplied the money. And what was happening that day, it's September 10th, 1919. Now, I guess they'd already clinched the pennant. They were going to go to the World Series. They're heavy favorites. You've got this intense conjunction between Mars, Neptune, and Jupiter, all right around 10 degrees Leo. And these are forming a square to the Cubs MC of 10 degrees Scorpio, exact square, and like a close square to Uranus at 12 Scorpio. So this is going on. You've got this intense energy affecting their highest standing. If you're the MC, is the reputation. Someone's about to, they're about to be champs. They're about to be on top of the world, win the World Series, and everybody expects them to be this. But you've got this contrary energy coming to this that will take a challenge, and will actually, they're actually willing to take the money to throw the games. And so let's look at this. You've got Mars, Neptune, and Jupiter. When Jupiter and Neptune come together, this is happening this year, and we're all excited about the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in Pisces. But as far as for sports are concerned, the history of like betting fixes and bad gambling things, this is kind of what has happened. In the Cincinnati Reds, when Hal Chase started throwing games, it was under similar aspects of Jupiter and Neptune. So what you've got going on is Neptune, Jupiter is the planet of gamblers, and Neptune is the planet of cheaters. I've been doing research on the electronic sign stealing scandal with the Astros, and a lot of that happened under Neptune aspects. So just Neptune has that loss of boundaries, that loss of proper values, proper limits, and it's done in sort of a soft way. Oh, anybody else would do it. Oh, we need the money or whatever, but I'm not sure how these guys justified it. The history books say that Comiskey was notoriously cheap, and he paid them didn't pay them what they were worth, so they were willing to throw the games because they weren't being paid their worth. But anyways, Comiskey's judged along with the rest of the Black Sox in this. But anyways, so this is what occurred. This is what set that up. You figure, how could this happen? How could people actually throw the World Series? Well, astrology explains it. And then you've got Mars, you got enough anger, you got enough aggression, you got enough willing to just do it. Perhaps throw in a little bit of arrogance because it's in the sign of Leo, and you've got people willing to throw the World Series. So there you have it. So let's move on to a happier chapter. I want to talk about Minnie Minoso. It's known as Mr. Cub. He's what is the face of the franchise for a long time. He was the first African-American player. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say African-American, so I think he was Cuban, but let's just say the first Black player to play for the White Sox. And he hit a home run in his very first pitch in a White Sox at bat. And he was instantly loved by the White Sox fans. So this is someone who's very highly identified with the White Sox fan. He's perfect face of the franchise for this team, for the times. And so let's look at the astrological correspondence of his debut. Here is, I'm estimating that I think it was the second inning when he was up, or maybe it was the bottom of the first. I believe bottom of the first. So I'm estimating it was about 2 o'clock. You could probably get more exact in that. What actually happened when he hit that home run? He'd just been traded from the A's to the White Sox, and the White Sox were playing at home against the Yankees. And he was up, I don't know if he was up second or third. However, the very first pitch that is thrown to Minnie Minoso, he clobbers it and hits a home run, and he was instantly loved by the White Sox fans. So how did this happen? What's going on astrologically in the White Sox chart? So the key to that is here. On May 1st, 1951, the sun was at 10 degrees. Wait, hold on, I lost. The sun was here at 10 degrees Taurus. This is exactly conjunct the White Sox I see, the lowest, deepest, most soulful point in their birth chart. Like I say, if you can touch someone here at their IC with an exact conjunction, they'll fall in love with you. And this is what the stage was set for Minnie Minoso to be able to do that. When he hit that home run, the sun was right here, 10 degrees Taurus, and they have loved him ever since. So let me talk about the resonance between Minnie Minoso's chart and the chart of the White Sox. What's fascinating about him, he mostly played left field, but he also played third base, and he was playing third base that day. So what's striking about his resonance with the White Sox is he's got a very strong Mars in Scorpio at 10 degrees Scorpio, which is exactly conjunct the White Sox MC, and also conjunct their Uranus and their own Mars. So right here, he's going to be have a very elevated position with this franchise. And so he also tapped into that Mars Uranus energy that the Sox have, that rebellious kind of badass. I mean, I did read his biography, but it was several years ago. So but he seems like a nice guy to me. He doesn't seem like a Mars and Scorpio type person, but Mars and maybe I'm stereotyping what Mars and Scorpio. I'm sure there are plenty of nice people with Mars and Scorpio, but anyways, he taps into that vibe of that Mars Uranus in Scorpio energy of the Sox right here. And if I had a chart if I had a rectified chart, it'd be interesting to see what else has got going on in resonance with the Sox. But this is the main one that I'm able to see. So let's talk about Disco Demolition Night, which happened in 1979. This is a very interesting moment in White Sox history. I don't know if anyone on the call was there. I sort of remember I was visiting relatives in Denver when I saw the newspaper the next day, and I saw the sign, "Disco sucks," and how this had happened. I remember my uncle, he said, "Well, you're just catering to the wrong crowd when this happened." Just don't want to cater to that kind of crowd. But anyways, it's not that simple, because let's look at the astrology of what was going on. And let's go back to the White Sox chart. And you've got that intense vibe between that opposition between the moon in Aries to Saturn in Libra. And this is a challenge to authority right off the bat. It didn't just happen in the 1919 World Series. Like I said earlier, that intense polarity between the masses of fans and either the owners or just authority, people in charge. You want here Saturn in Gemini, say it's genteel. It wants people to play by the rules. It wants politeness, and it's going to enforce it. And Moon in Aries is the opposite. Let's just storm the field and take off our shirts and just be wild. So here's what happened that night. Here's the transits. You've got a square from Mars in Gemini to Saturn in Virgo. So here you've got something's just bursting to happen. You've got youth against authority, sons against the fathers. Or you could say juvenile delinquents against the police. It's right here. It's right here getting set up by this opposition between the energy of Mars, the energy of youth, and the energy of Saturn, the energy of adults and authority. And then look what was triggered in the White Sox chart, where Mars was almost 12 degrees Gemini, is right on their conjunction between Pluto and Neptune that they have. So it's tapped into that vibe, that not only the Neptunian energy, we're going to be libertines, we're going to just go for it, and we're going to storm the field, and we don't care, we've lost all our boundaries, and we're just going with the flow, along with just that intense dark energy of Pluto. And the Sox have a lot of it, since they've got a Scorpio moon, and you've got Mars and Scorpio, you've got all that Scorpio energy. So that was tapped with that aspect. The other thing that was going on was you've got this, it's summer, it's July, And you've got the moon, the sun in the sign of Cancer. Here is the sun in Cancer, and at 20 degrees Cancer, and it's exactly square to their Saturn at 20 degrees Libra. So this is a direct challenge to authority that's happening. So that was Disco Demolition Night. I feel bad for Bill Veck, who was the owner.
Magic Prepper is in the house. What's that, Matt? Good to see.
Yeah, Bill Veck and Harry Carey ran on the field, tried to tell these guys, hey, get back in the stands. Don't please don't do that. Please, we're asking you, we're begging you. But they weren't gonna have none of it. So the second game was forfeited to the Detroit Tigers. And I read Bill Veck's biography. Apparently he was pretty shocked. He was pretty devastated that people would do that because he was an Aquarius and he liked to think that people were better, but he'd never quite seen a mob just out of control before. Okay, so last thing I want to say about the White Sox is they have this aspect here of Pluto conjunct Neptune, and this is the rarest of transits. This happens only once every 500 years. And I was reading up Richard Tarnas in Cosmos and Psyche, and he talks about this as a change of global orders that are happening, an end of an old order and a start of a new order. And there's a few baseball teams that have this. And I mean, I was reading in Tarnas, and he talks about this as just like the end of the era that was based on sort of Christian values and a return to something kind of Nietzschean, return of other gods. And I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, this is the return of the Dionysian energy that is happening in the 1890s and early part of the 20th century. And the Sox are part of that. They still hold that. There's that very Dionysian energy that this team holds. This is a very tight conjunction of outer planets. And they're harbingers of just what's changing. And I like to think that this is sports and baseball particularly, a sort of return or bringing a return to earth-centered values and more of the female earth-centered values rather than values based on just ideas and sky gods. And we're getting more earth-centered, and that the White Sox are part of this change. So anyways, so that's what I have to say for the White Sox. I'm going to move to the north side now. And so I gotta take a couple sips of tea and dive into the Cubs now. So the Cubs were born in 1870. And this is a picture of one of the earliest teams. And here is their birth chart. And I point out a few things. They have Aries rising with Neptune conjunct the ascendant. And this is consistent with their name. They're called the Cubs. Before they were called the Cubs, they were actually called the Colts also. You think of like youthful names that mean youth. Aries being the youngest sign in the zodiac, young animals. Cub is a young animal. It's freshly born. It's new and it's fresh. It's not an old bear that's grouchy, which is probably something more Saturnian. So I think of Cubs as consistent with the Aries rising, especially colts, a young, fresh animal, newly born out there. And also want you to look at Moon in Taurus. And you've also got Uranus in the fourth house. This is Wrigley Field here, that you've got a park that at this date we'll say celebrates nature, that has the ivy, that is just, I've never been there. I've been to the outside of it, but I look at the pictures, figure, wow, that is just the most bucolic place to go and indulge in nature. It's got that Taurus energy, just reeking of all that with the ivy. And then you also think of Uranus in the fourth house. This is the wind. Uranus rules wind. The fact that the fourth house is also consistent is also an indicator of the stadium. That Wrigley Field is a windy place where a lot of home runs are hit. This is indicative of Uranus in the fourth house. We've also got the sun is conjunct Mars, and in the sign of Pisces in the 12th house. Put that together with Neptune conjunct the ascendant. This team is just overflowing in Pisces and Neptune energy. So, and it's going to show a lot in its history. So here's Wrigley Field. Got just the feel of just nature, and I got to get there soon. Here's the ivy. Now, let me talk about the White Stockings. They were called the White Stockings until I think sometime in the early 1900s, and then they kind of shed that name. I think somewhere they changed their name to Cubs, and then the Colts before that. I think somewhere in between they were called the Orphans. However, they were called the White Stockings throughout the 19th century, and this was a great team. They were a dynasty. They won 5 championships in the 1800s, and a lot of the power was transiting through the sign of Taurus in the 1880s. So they were able to take advantage of Neptune and Taurus, they were able to channel that in a good way. And then they had, with all that Pisces energy, it was manifest not just on the field. They were known to be drunks, and a lot of these guys were, and also brawlers. The Aries rising was they were pugilists, they were brawlers. That's how they manifested that Aries energy. But they were also drunks. They allegedly lost the 1886 World Series against St. Louis because enough of the players took the field drunk and they just didn't play up to their ability. So this is how they used to manifest all that Pisces and Neptune energy. It wasn't in ways that I'm going to get into later. It was just, through imbibing. So this is our first manager, Cap Anson. He was a first baseman and also their manager. And I'm going to show you his birth chart. He has a lot of Pisces energy. He's got Mars, Neptune, and Venus all conjunct in the sign of Pisces. So this is good for a first baseman. You want Pisces energy to be able to absorb all that stuff. It's also good for being on the Cubs. He's also these aspects made him a manager. Sun conjunct Saturn, conjunct here in Aries. The fact that Pluto is also there is probably part of a different story that I'm not going to go into here. And this is close enough to the Cubs ascendant that he was likely the face of the franchise in that era, both the manager and the first baseman, although King Kelly was also really well known. Here's another great first baseman in the Cubs history. So what I'm trying to say is that this team has a pattern of great first basemen. So all that Pisces energy, you're going to have a lineage of first basemen. So Frank Chance was the first baseman in the early 20th century. He's the one who anchored the Tinker to Everest Chance jingle. And he has Saturn in the North Node in the sign of Pisces, if you look at his birth chart. And then Hack Wilson, also a great first baseman. His chart had Venus conjunct Neptune in Pisces, and he set the record. He still holds the record for most RBIs in the season, 191 RBIs in 1930. Unfortunately, he met that sad cliche of Pisces and Neptunian people. He became an alcoholic, and it ruined his career as a player. But still, he was a brilliant first baseman, as part of the legacy of Cubs first baseman. So Mr. Cub, Ernie Banks, he played shortstop and first base. He's interesting face of the franchise, someone very highly associated with the Cubs. Let's look at what is his resonance with this team. Why is he so special to North Side of Chicago? To be called Mr. Cub is quite a title. I live in Northern California. We don't have anybody that's called Mr. Giant. Anybody that's called Mr. Athletic. I don't know that we ever have given that name to anybody. So how do you become the face of the franchise? So here is Ernie Banks' birth chart, and he's got the North Node at 18 Aries. It's conjunct the Cubs Neptune and also their ascendant. So he's able to vibe into that Neptunian energy right at their ascendant, become highly associated with the team. He's also got the moon and Jupiter in Cancer at 9 and 12 degrees Cancer, which are conjunct the Cubs IC. Like I was saying with Minnie Minoso, you want people to fall in love with you, touch them right there at this deepest point of your IC. You're going to get them at that, make them feel secure in that real soulful, deep place, the IC. So Ernie Banks did that. So this is Mr. Cub. Now, the curse. What was going on here? This has been like my teaser. Well, I wanted to explain the astrology behind the curse that was laid on the Cubs. So the story goes, it's the 1945 World Series. I don't recall what game it was, but it was October 6, 1945. And Billy Cianis, who owned a tavern nearby, is at the game with his pet goat. And they've got two tickets, and he's got 2 seats, but he's told by the ushers he's got to leave towards the end of the game. And he leaves, but he tells them, he lays a curse on the team, saying there will never be a World Series played here again. And I found this picture on the internet, and it almost, I wish somebody could authenticate it, because this almost looks like a Hollywood recreation of this event. I mean, here, he's got 2 tickets in his hand. The usher looks like he's laughing at him. He's dressed rather dapper. These other ushers seem to be having a good laugh at it. I mean, he's going out, being pushed out the turnstile, and here's the goat who has his little legs around the gate, just saying, "Okay, I'm not going, or if I'm going, you're going to pay a really heavy price." So I don't know. This picture just looks a little too like a Hollywood recreation. I'm assuming it's right, but something just strikes me a little funny about it. So anyways, that's what happened. Many of you know the story, and the Cubs indeed did not play a World Series in Wrigley Field for a very, very long time. So what was happening astrologically that afternoon when the curse was thrown? But first, let me explain the concept of Antitia. This is like one of the finer points of astrology. So Antitia, each point in the zodiac has a point that is somewhat, not exactly opposite to it, but is the same equal number of degrees to the 0 degrees Cancer, 0 degrees Capricorn axis on the zodiac wheel. I mean, for example, like 1 degrees Cancer has an Antitia point of 29 degrees Gemini. The 5 degrees Capricorn has an Antitia point of 25 degrees Sagittarius. So it's going to be equal amount of degrees from one side of the wheel to the other. And in Antitia, it's an indicator of a planet's shadow. I mean, it's hidden energies. And the important thing to notice here is that the Cubs' sun is at 17 degrees, and it has an Antitia of 13 degrees Libra. Now, let's look at the chart of what happened when, I'm assuming that the curse happened at about 4 o'clock on this day, October 6th. And if we look at where was the sun at that point, it's 13 degrees Libra. This is the Antitia point of the Cubs' sun of 17 Pisces. And the other not good aspect is the moon here, pretty close to 21 degrees Libra, which is right on the Cubs' descendant. They figure like a descendant point, it's the point of lovers, of partnerships, but it's also the point of enemies. Someone who's really at cross purposes with you they can have their energy right at that descendant. If you're the self, is that your self point is right, is that your ascendant, your enemy is going to be at the descendant. So this was not good energy for the Cubs. This is just like this Billy Cianis picked the perfect moment to throw dark energy at the Cubs. And I'm thinking, well, I mean, leads a greater question. Well, what is a curse? I mean, I'm not real familiar with these things, but the way I understand it is like someone takes a ball of just dark, hostile energy, puts it together, and then throws it at somebody else, and tries to make it stick. But if you're the person being cursed, can't you just say, "I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever's thrown at me bounces off me, goes back to you"? Well, yes, but this isn't going to work if you have this kind of chart. If you've got heavy 12th house with the sun and Mars in Pisces, because Pisces absorbs things, and Sun conjunct Mars is kind of self-inflicted wounds that someone will just like, oh, it's somebody beating themselves up in their basement. They're in the 12th house. So that kind of personality is just going to absorb that kind of energy. I don't recommend it. If someone insults you, don't go home into your basement and then just let it curse you. But this is what will happen if you've got all that kind of Pisces and 12th house energy. So anyways, here's the energy. Here's the chart again of Curse of the Goat when this happened. And then let me go forward in time. First of all, I want to talk about, this is also about taking in on this energy. Now, I got to admit, Pisces is also the ruler of last place. It kind of likes to feel sorry for self. It goes down there in the bottom of the standings. And the Cubs have had last place finishes. Another Pisces team is the Tampa Bay Rays. They've had a lot of last place finishes. I think they had 10 in a row. So if you're a Pisces, you find some sort of a soulful connection with losing. I mean, I'm saying, I think we need to think that losing is not necessarily a bad thing. There is nobility in losing. We don't like to admit it, but there's something to be said for just admitting that it's not all about winning. You can learn from losing too. And the Pisces Pisces energy and the Cubs and Rays have allowed us to do this. So anyways, fast forward, 1969, the Cubs are ahead in the standings by 1.5 games. And they're at Shea Stadium in New York, and Ron Santo is on the on-deck circle. And what happens? Black Cat comes out of nowhere and circles around him. And so what happens? They lose 17 out of the next 25 games, and they end up losing the pennant to the Mets, Miracle Mets. And everybody thought, well, that's uncanny. How does a Black Cat get on the field? How do we get cursed like that? Well, okay, I'll explain. Here's a chart for what happened during the Black Cat incident. Interestingly, Mercury is at pretty close to 13 degrees Libra, the same degree where the sun was when Billy Sianis threw the curse. It's at the same Antitia degree to the Cubs' sun. So here is an echo of that original curse. A few decades later, it's 1969, it's no longer 1945, that's 25 years later, and the energy is still holding. And here's an echo of it in the chart for what happened. The other not so, a little more obvious thing is like, okay, the sun's at 17 degrees Libra, also opposite the Cubs' sun, but that's less profound, that you've got this echo here of 13 degrees Libra. Now, let's go a little further. 2000, I believe this was 2003. The Cubs are on their way to the World Series. They're 5 outs from getting there. They're playing the Florida Marlins, and they're here's a ball that Moises Alou, the Cubs left fielder, had a pretty good chance of getting. Maybe he couldn't have got it, but he's interfered with by a fan. Steve Bartman gets in the way wearing his Walkman, and he ends up not getting the out. The Cubs lose the game, and they lose the game the next day, and they don't go to the World Series. And they're thinking, oh no, we're cursed. How did this happen? How we were about to go there again. Well, got an answer for you. How did this happen? Let's look at the astrology of what happened then. It says, here is Mercury, again at 13 degrees Libra, at the Antitia point of the Cubs' sun. So it's an echo of the original curses happening again. And then, interestingly, again, you've got the sun at 21 degrees Libra, also on the descendant where the moon was when the original curse was thrown. So it's these same degrees are being echoed, 21 degrees Libra and 13 degrees Libra. That these are negative points for the Cubs, one by Antitia and one by being the descendant. So the curse was the curse was a serious thing, and you've got these echoes of it, and it's shown in astrology. There are probably other moments in the Cubs' history, if we look at it, where crazy things happened that shouldn't have happened, and I would look for these degrees: 13 degrees Libra and 21 degrees Libra. You really want to look at how this curse manifests throughout the next several decades of the Cubs' history. But it doesn't have to end that way. How do you break a curse? Indeed, the curse was broken. As we know, the Cubs won the World Series in 2016. And so you want to know, I mean, they did various things to try to break the curse. They got a bunch of goats on the field one day and just say, hey, please forgive us, please, we'll let goats on the field and all that. That didn't work. So, but anyways, what was the astrology behind their final win? So I've got a chart here for when the World Series was won in Cleveland, and there's fine points of this chart, actually what was going on in the game, but I just want to talk about what was happening during the season of 2016. And the major aspect as relates to the Cubs was this: you had Uranus at 21 degrees Aries, exactly conjunct the Cubs ascendant. And they were able to channel Uranus energy. You had a manager, Joe Madden, who had this Uranian persona of kind of like the mad scientist, the nerd mad scientist. He wore the glasses, and he used a lot of shifts. He did very unusual things. Went against the grain. He would take a pitcher and put him in left field and let the left and rotate his, get another pitcher on the mound so they could and bring that pitcher from left field back to the mound so that he wouldn't have to be out of the game. And this is just the kind of thing that wasn't done. So it's very Aquarian, very Uranian. He brought that energy. He was able to channel it. And so anyways, but basically the key was Uranus conjunct the ascendant. You figure, okay, if you're cursed, I don't think you necessarily have to wait for Uranus to conjunct your ascendant, but that is one. There's probably lots of ways of lifting a curse, but that's the way it worked for the Cubs. So anyways, I've been talking a very long time, and this is the end of my presentation. So thank you very much for the honor of letting me talk about your teams, about the Cubs and the White Sox. And my name's Cesar Love, and I'd be happy to take any questions. And also plug for my book. If you want to buy my book, it's called Baseball and Astrological Sightline. You can buy it off my website, www.baseballastrology.com. If you want to email me, I'm happy to take emails, baseballastrology@outlook.com. So thank you so much. And I am going to stop screen sharing now.
Okay, Cesar, please feel free to type your contact. Oh, it's on the screen. Feel free to type your email address in the chat pod.
I will. Yes.
Okay, are there any questions for Cesar? Cesar, I am impressed with the application of astrology to baseball, your research and your delivery of it. One question I have you ever taken a look at Harold Baines? And was he the Leo type in some shape, form, or fashion? He played for the White Sox. He was big in the 80s.
Okay, I remember Harold Baines. If I remember, he was a speedster base runner, really stole a lot of bases. I think he led the leagues in stolen bases?
He may have. I don't remember all the details.
I can get back to you on that. But he seems to fit in with like the White Sox when they won games. They have had good seasons with speedsters and all that. But I'll get back to you on Harold Baines. I mean, I could probably.
I was just asking in the moment. I was just wondering. It was just out of curiosity.
Did he play right field?
I don't remember. It was so long ago. I don't remember.
All right.
Are there any other? Oh, yes. David has his hand raised. David, you have the microphone.
Two questions. One, was the go to Capricorn?
It's interesting. because the goat is considered the goat's a symbol of Capricorn. You figure like the goat is the symbol of the devil and of all that dark energy, and you figure Capricorns and it's a it probably was. I think if wherever the goat, if you got the goat had a birth certificate, but the goat is certainly a symbol of Capricorn, and Capricorn is supposed to be the one, born under a bad sign. It's a sign of hard luck. So yeah, that's the other side of that the goat is considered a harbinger of bad energy that way. So thanks, David.
Yeah, the analysis of the curse got me. I'm a believer.
Oh, thank you, David.
Right. In astrology or in baseball or in the Cubs? You're
Well, I'm
a
a South
Sox
Sider,
fan.
so you figure it out.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, are there any additional questions for Cesar?
There was something in the chat about Moneyball. I think
Oh, let's see.
I have a
Did I
question.
miss? Oh, yes. Connie Highland is asking, also, did you do an astrological analysis of the baseball team in Oakland and its owners and the method of putting together players?
Okay, you're thinking of so the A's in their birth chart, they have Uranus conjunct Jupiter, and that gives them their inventive quality, how they're able to come up with things like the Moneyball idea. In terms of the owners of the A's, I mean, I'm an A's fan, and the owners have been notoriously cheap, and it's part of the problem is, they've got Saturn opposite Neptune, and I don't know if that necessarily means that someone's going to be cheap, but they're cheap now. But the inventiveness of the A's, the fact that they've done that, it comes out of that Uranus Jupiter conjunction. So they come up with things like Moneyball and what are their other inventions? That escapes me in the moment. They're across the yard from me, but
Charlie Finley's selling his team off.
yeah, that's the cheapness of him. So, well, are there more questions in the chat?
No, Cesar, I do not see any additional questions in the chat pod.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm so happy to have been able to give this presentation, especially, like I say, I gave you guys a disclaimer being that I'm not from Chicago, I'm not a Cubs fan or a White Sox fan, but I've done my best to feel what it's like to sort of feel the vibe of both teams and to just kind of go there and read their history, be there with their tragedies, be there with their triumph. But it's one of those. But
you see David. David.
I do. But
love it, David. Love it. So, Cesar, I have a question. So I think once a year, the Chicago Cubs will play the Chicago White Sox, and we call it the Crosstown Classic. Have you ever taken a look at the transits for the day for both of those teams?
So it's, well, to actually look at the chart of a game between two teams, that's interesting to actually see what's going to be happening. You could make some predictions about it. What would happen is these teams do not seem to have duplicated degrees. Lots of times when you have teams in the same geographical area, the charts are somewhat sort of connected, but it could be that they are. I just haven't been able to see it. Maybe there's some sort of an opposition. If you look at I figure the Pisces energy isn't necessarily in opposition to the Scorpio energy of White Sox. They're in trine. So on paper, looking at the, well, wait a minute. Actually, hold on. Let me think about this. The ascendant descendant of the Cubs is Aries Libra, and that is the same opposition going on with the White Sox moon and Libra. So you do have that, and you do have the White Sox Saturn of 20 Libra is conjunct the Cubs descendant. So yeah, there's the bad energy. There's the bad blood right there. That's where, yeah, that's the point of the enemy. Or, maybe this case, just the opponent. I kind of like to root for everybody. I'm in Bay Area and I root for both the Giants and the A's, but there are people who think I'm a weirdo. It's true, I am, but I don't see any, I don't have any problem with rooting for teams that are supposedly enemies of each other. It's like, but things are different in other areas. I understand in Chicago, it's more of a, there are serious political and social issues between the North and the South side.
Yes. 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 There is some polarization here. Yes. Okay. Well, it seems that there are no more questions in the chat pod. And on behalf of the board of directors and the members of the Friends of Astrology, I want to thank each of you for your time and attention this evening. We certainly hope you enjoyed tonight's presentation, which was very specifically catered to Chicago. The Friends of Astrology was founded in Chicago in 1938. So we certainly like that. So with that, want to tell everyone to have a good evening here in Chicago. Stay warm. It is still winter time for us. And on next Friday, 1 week from today, we will have Theo Naker presenting for us. And I apologize in the moment, I don't know the name of his presentation, but you can check the website and for that information. But next Friday, same time, we will be here. And again, thank you, everyone. Be safe, be well, be warm. Take care.
All right.
All right.
Sammy Sosa goes like this.
Mwah, to everybody.
Yes. Hey, this was a blast. Thank you so much.
This is a great presentation. This was good. This was a good one. Yes, it was. Thank you. Take care, everyone. Good night.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
You got it. Bye-bye.
Bye.